So, is this the age of Aquarius? I've heard that question a lot lately, or I've heard a lot of people talking about the age of Aquarius. And so I thought I would hop on today and tackle two questions. What is the age of Aquarius? And is this it? If you're new here, my name's Lisa Merrifield. This is Age Astrology, and my goal on this channel is to give grounded and practical astrological advice so that you can make a meaningful impact in the world and follow your path with clarity and purpose. So, not to bury the lead, to answer the question, is this the age of Aquarius? Maybe, but probably not for the reasons you think. So, you know that Pluto has moved into Aquarius. We've all been talking about it. Pluto will be in Aquarius for the next 20 years and will likely transform society in ways we can only begin to fathom. And if you've been listening to my 1 minutes, you also know that the sun just sextiled Pluto um, at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and that's a really sensitive point in the chart because at the end of 2020, Jupiter and Saturn met at 0 degrees of Aquarius, ushering in a new 20-year cycle and a new 200-year cycle. So Pluto and Jupiter meet every 20 years, and they set the path for how we refine our physical and mental processes. They initiate in new value systems and how we live into those values. So, the fact that they met at 0 degrees of Aquarius is significant because prior to that, for the 200 years prior to that, Jupiter and Saturn had been meeting in Earth signs. So we very much valued physical kinds of things, material possessions, things that we can measure with our five senses, those kinds of things. But in December of 2020, when Jupiter and Saturn met in Aquarius, they began a new 200-year cycle in air signs. So starting in Aquarius and for the next 200 years, Jupiter and Saturn will meet in air signs. And air signs are more heady. It's more about communication and ideas. And so it's likely that our values will shift out of that, you know, what kind of car you drive to how do you think about cars. So, for example, that's a broad overgeneralization, but you get the idea. Moving from the physical objects into more about the connections and the communications and the interpersonal um, evaluations and ideas. So, Aquarius has definitely gotten a lot of attention lately because of those two things. Um, but ages are measured a little bit differently. So Pluto moving into Aquarius, the fact that Jupiter and Saturn came together in Aquarius, that actually those things are significant, and certainly they are playing into and supporting these Aquarian kinds of themes for us. But we measure ages a little bit differently. So hopefully this won't be hopefully I can say this concisely and clearly. So the Earth's orbit wobbles. So the Earth spins as it rotates around the sun, but it's not a uniform spin. There's a little bit of a wobble. So the horizon moves something like a degree every 72 years or something like that, and it's called precession. So technically, the way we measure ages, like the age of Aquarius, is we look at where the sun is on the March equinox. So the constellation the sun is in on the March equinox, at the moment of the March equinox, is what age we're in. Does that make sense? So because the Earth wobbles and moves, ages last about, I think it's 2,150 years. So 2,150 years is an age. And and it takes about 26,000 years for the Earth to wobble back to the place it was at, the beginning point of measurement, whatever point we pick. So ages are really long, long cycles. Um, so right now we are somewhere between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius. And it's hard to know exactly when that transition happens, because the sky is vast and the measurements are it's hard to be precise about that. But we are somewhere in that process of transitioning from the age of Aries, or I'm sorry, from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. And it'll be hard to tell, to pinpoint exactly when that is. Some astrologers have looked at that and have hypothesized, but I'm going to leave it that we're somewhere in that space. Um, just as a side note on this, in Western astrology, we ground the signs to the solstices and the equinoxes. So we don't observe precession. And that means that the signs that were named 2,000 years ago are no longer completely in the constellations when we look up at the sky. So the constellation of Aries um, isn't necessarily where the sign of Aries is. It depends on where you're looking and whatnot. But that it causes confusion, but it's an important point to note that in Western astrology or tropical astrology, we want Capricorn to always be in the winter, and we want Cancer to always be in the summer. And so that's how we've grounded it. That's archetypally how we think of it. If you're curious, Vedic or Jyotish astrology um, does observe precession, and so they measure things a little bit differently and think about it a little bit differently. But for our purposes here today, um, we ground to the seasons, so the signs are not necessarily in the constellations. But ages are measured with where the sun is at the moment of the March equinox and what sign it is in, what constellation it is in the sky. So, um, so again, ages last about uh, 2,150 years. So they're really long. So they're longer than that 20-year Pluto in Aquarius cycle, and longer than that 200-year Jupiter and Saturn meeting in air signs cycle. So this is a kind of a broader picture, and we find this in astrology. There are cycles within cycles within cycles. Certainly, we're getting a jump start into the age of Aquarius with all of this Aquarian pressure and energy. But is this technically the age of Aquarius? Again, I say maybe. Um, so transitions between any kind of large cycles like this are tough. They're bumpy. There's both forward momentum and resistance, and it's just kind of this melting point of movement. Change is hard. We know this. For any of us, big changes to small change, big changes, yeah, small changes to big changes. There we go. Are tough, and so certainly changes like a change in age is tough. And that's largely because the ages kind of mark consciousness for us. So they mark really profound ways that society has shifted, humanity has shifted in terms of how it visions itself and the world. And certainly technology plays into that. And we build on what's come in the past. So it's not like we're just dropped into this vacuum. So the ages build on each other, but they do mark um, significant shifts in consciousness. So right now we're in the age of Pisces, and we are 2,100 years into the age of Pisces, somewhere in there. Um, and the age of Pisces has really brought about the Abrahamic religions. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Buddha was also born in the age of Pisces. So the age of Pisces is really, I think, colored by the formation of these really foundational worldwide religions. Um, but before that, we were in the age of Aries. And in the age of Aries, that brought us the Iron Age. Aries is the sign of fire and of initiation and transformations. And the Iron Age, the fact that we could smelt iron is very Aryan. Um, the age of Aries was also where we really started to form large scale nation states, and they were often built on aggression and initiation and kind of those Aryan rugged individualistic principles. So Age of Pisces, Age of Aries. Before that was the Age of Taurus. And that was a time when people often literally worshipped bulls, quite honestly. And and there was a real focus on material security during that time, like figuring out how to live in groups, and make sure that you could eat during the winter, all, all of that. And the Age of Taurus was also when things like the pyramids were built. Stonehenge may have been constructed during the Age of Taurus, those big, long standing structures. So you get the idea. Yeah, and you can trace it back. If you go back a few more, uh, well, several, if you go back to the Age of Virgo, that was um, when we started agriculture. And so, anyway, it plays out. Um, as you can see, when you start to look back through the ages, but you can't necessarily like draw a line in the sand, like this is when an age ended and a new age began. There's definitely this kind of slushy period in the middle where lots of things are changing. So, when we talk about the age of Aquarius, it has been billed as a shift, um, kind of a golden age of equanimity and harmony. Um, and definitely like a shift in consciousness from maybe those kind of fixed structural religions into something, a different way of thinking about and valuing our time and our connections to other people, and just even how we measure what success looks like, how we what we value and how we measure that. So, will it be a golden age? Uh, I would guess it will be a mixed bag. As an astrologer, we all get super excited when there are changes like this, big, big changes that bring about new energy. That's just like, that's like birthday parties. Um, and, I know from, watching this over the last 10 or so years very, very closely, that, uh, that there's good and bad. Like it's not a panacea. It's not suddenly that everything changes and becomes, you know, uh, everything I've ever hoped for. It really is a mixed bag. We take two steps forward and one step back. And I think that's by design. This is an iterative process, and the upward momentum in, or sideways momentum of growth, or whatever word you want to use, momentum in our collective consciousness is, it's just a slow process, and it's hard to know necessarily what is good and what is bad in the moment. It's only after hundreds of years we can reflect back and say, "Oh, we see how this is working." So we're in that middle stage, and that's why I say, "Are we in the age of Aquarius?" Maybe. So yeah, we're living through the transition. Um, it might get more wild. It probably will get more wild before it settles down. And my hope for all of us is that we live long enough to kind of see how the pieces are getting put together, what it is we are catalyzing in this moment. So I hope this helps. Hope this was interesting. If it was, would you give me a like, and a comment? I always like to hear those and see those. It helps me know that you're out there, and know what's interesting to you. All right, my friends, I will see you soon. Thanks. Bye.